We would appreciate if you can switch off your mobile phones or put them on silence mode. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the discussion, and we would appreciate if you can observe complete silence while the session is in progress. Our moderator for this session is Mr. Asif Noorani. I have the honor to introduce him as our moderator for this session. He writes on culture, particularly music and literature, and reviews books. Renowned for his wit, he is an ardent crusader for cultural relations between India and Pakistan, conveying his viewpoint through his writings and occasionally through his talks. I would like to hand over the session to Mr. Asif now.
Thank you. To introduce the panelists to this august audience, and as a punishment for coming late, I'll introduce Marc first.
It's an honor.
Marc Parent has been involved in international publishing for 28 years in the wake of his studies in French and comparative literature in Paris and New York, both sides of the Atlantic. For the last 10 years, he has been a publisher of fiction and non-fiction in France. He has put together a major catalogue of some of the finest Pakistani and Indian writers. He has translated from Urdu to French direct.
Directly. Manto?
Yes.
Sahadat Hassan Manto, in fact, I published in 2008 and from the Urdu directly into French.
Right. So, he is currently the sales and marketing director of Taschen Publishers.
Taschen Publishers.
Taschen Publishers for the subcontinent. Marc, as my punishment is that I'll learn French from you. The pronunciation only. Now, as a firm believer in ladies first, Ameena will have to wait because she's the hostess. So we start with Ritu Menon. Ritu wears 3 hats. She's not wearing any at the moment, but she writes, she publishes, and she's also a social activist. And what is more, she excels in everything that she does. Her subject is women, not the glamorous Bollywood stars.
Why not?
Not Madhuri Dixit by any chance. But those who suffer or have suffered at the hands of writers, exploiters, and sex maniacs.
I didn't say that.
You didn't say that. Okay. You always. You can't stop readers from forming their own opinion. So you can refute me whenever you like, but after this session is over, because as I said, the time is very limited. So she co-founded a publishing house with a mission. It was Kali for Women. Now she runs a reputed publishing company called Women Unlimited. My favorite is Borders and Boundaries, which narrates horrifying stories relating to partition. It was published by OUP in Pakistan in, I think, 2004. Her other thought-provoking book is Unequal Citizens, a study of the Muslim women in India. Her latest work is a political and literary biography of Nayanthara Saigal, which is available at the Oxford stall, and I think you should not miss this opportunity of buying it and getting it signed.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Now, we come to Karthika. She's currently the publisher and chief editor of HarperCollins India, a company she joined in 2006. Prior to that, she was with Penguin India since 1996. She has published a number of eminent writers, including the Booker Prize winner Aravind Adiga, and our own leading writers such as H.M. Naqvi, Irshad Abdul Qadir, Usman Salahuddin, and our late friend Murtaza Razvi. At HarperCollins, she oversees a publishing program that includes poetry, graphic fiction, and sports. Next is, of course, Ameena Saiyid. I don't think that there should be anyone in this audience who would be unaware of Ameena's invaluable contribution to the book industry in Pakistan, or shall I say, to learning as a whole. She has been heading OUP for more than 25 years, which moved from a modest office in a Bangalore to a sprawling premises in Korangi industrial area. All this happened during her stewardship. When she took over the reins of OUP, it used to publish merely 4 or 5 titles a year. Today, the number has crossed the 200 mark. Her initiative in starting Literature Festival, which she co-founded, and is the chief organizer in Karachi and later in Islamabad, and Teachers Festivals and Children's Festivals are all well known to people. She was awarded the coveted Order of the British Empire. It could also be Business Empire. In 2005, and was more recently, that is in 2013, knighted by the French government. Ameena is also overseeing Oxford University Press's interest in the UAE. She is the first woman CEO of a multinational in Pakistan. Now, something which I feel is that it's about time she wrote her memoirs. I will be the first to buy it and not ask for a discount, which I normally do. So, because in this way, she will be cataloging and chronicling the development of the new phase in book industry in Pakistan, and will also be a social commentary. Finally, Afzaal Sahib, Mr. Afzaal Ahmad, he is a graduate of the prestigious Government College Lahore. Afzaal Ahmad, you are from the Government College Lahore also. Bias. Achha. So, Afzaal Ahmad is the live wire behind Sange-Meal Publications. And just for Marc's information, Sange-Meal means milestone. And indeed, Sange-Meal has been a milestone in publishing. The quality of the books leaves nothing to be desired. It's of a very high standard. So, thank you, all of you. And apart from fiction and literature, he also publishes history. And there's a lot more that can be said about my friends, the panelists, but I think the time will be short. I'd like to just say one question to each and then leave for them to talk, and I will keep quiet until such time as I see them quarreling. So, well, it's about the printed word, but I think let's be specific. It is about books. The printed word is also on the back side of the receipt that the laundry gives you, which you never read. But so, as far as books are concerned, I feel that a book is the second best thing to curl up in bed with. Now, before you think I'm a dirty old man or a dirty not so old man, let me tell you that my finest moment in bed is when I'm lying down with my grandson and showing him or reading Rumana Hussein's beautiful books that have been publications that have been that attracts him, and he keeps answering it. And since there are just about 10, 12 books, so he seems to remember more than what the author would. To begin with, Marc, the first question. Many people tend to think that written word and printed word are the same. No one has any doubt that written word is under any threat. But do you think that the printed word in the form of a book, a magazine or a newspaper has suffered in recent years?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for having me part of this panel. I'm so happy to be back in Karachi. I was here last year, and I'm so happy to see that the crowds have increased in the name of literature and in the name of passion for precisely the written word. And Ameena, thank you very much once again, and congratulations for what you've been achieving. Insofar as the written word is concerned, it will never vanish. It will never vanish. It's just changing supports. The supports are changing, but the written word is remaining. Actually, I think that with the arising of the cell phones, for instance, I see that there's an increase in people writing to each other, whether it's under a short form of SMSs or very long SMSs. People have a tendency to write more. Of course, letters maybe have disappeared, and what's at stake maybe is the economy of the post office. But actually, I think that the written word is quite valiant today. And so far as literature is concerned, I think that we are actually witnessing a decrease in the number of books sold worldwide, I would say, and that the reason for that is that the book is challenged not so much by other supports for the written word, but I think it is challenged by, at least in the West, by the screen. The time that people spend in front of screens, whether it's a computer, whether it's a TV, whether it's a video game. Today in France, the average time spent by people in front of a screen is of 4 hours about per day, where in America it's close to 9 hours. So this is the real danger, and this is the real challenge that we have to pick up. But I think that the book, even though it is slowly decreasing because of the pressure of the screen, I think has, in some countries like the subcontinent, precisely, has a future, and that the retail space for the physical book has not gone. I see in India, for instance, bookshops that close down, but for one bookshop that closes down, there's another one that opens up. And I personally live on hope. and that I think that there's something there that has to be taken into consideration and looked at, and we have to continue making books and producing books for these bookshops that are precisely opening up.
Thank you, Marc. Now, Afzaal Saab, your experience with Urdu books has been crowned with success, exceptional success. But what has your experience with English language books been like?
I think in both the languages, Urdu and English, Pakistan has a very good market, and we feel lucky that we are in the book trade and producing books, and it's a great future for printed word in Pakistan, from written word to transform the written word into printed form. I think it's a kind of great service which we feel honored to do, and in Pakistan the market is getting better day by day. Like you see that there are now many literary festivals all around Pakistan, and the people, more and more people are coming to see the writer, to meet the writers, to see the new books. But its overall impression is not good. But actually the situation is very, very good, and we are very hopeful that it's very, very long time that we can see, or we can see any fear that book trade will go downward, because the gadgetry which you use to read a book other than the printed word, the physical book, is very difficult to handle and expensive. Well, if you have a physical book with you, you feel the word, you feel the book, you smell it, you read it, you take it, like you said, Mr. Asif said, you take it with you in the bed, wherever you go, you can take it. And the best thing is when you have a bookshelf, whoever comes to see you, when he sees that you have a lot of books, physical books, so you don't have to convince him that you are a educated person, but you have 2,000 books in your Kindle or in your iPad. Nobody knows that. and you can't even share your book with other people. So in Pakistan, we are very hopeful. There's a great future of printed word in Pakistan, but especially the publishers should come forward. There are very few publishers in Pakistan who seriously, publishing books, because the first, whenever they feel any, the right moment to exit from this publishing world, they got attracted to different fields. But we at Sangamil Publication, we feel very honored, we feel very happy. We're really enjoying this publishing business, and I'm very hopeful. And our next generation, I am the second generation, our third generation is also in the Sangamil, and they are very happy, especially when you introduce your Urdu literature to youngsters, to English medium, students. They feel very proud that, oh, we haven't, thought of that. There's so much written in Urdu which really touches our hearts. And you have to only introduce the Urdu literature or Urdu books to the Pakistani students, Pakistani youngsters. And these literature festivals are doing the same service. And I'm very, very happy. I'm really thankful whoever is organizing, Ameena, Saiyid, and Asif and OUP, and many other, and all the big writers who are contributing in Urdu.
Thank you very much. And before I come to the next speaker, I must be elated by the presence of Mr. Intizar Hussain, one of the leading Urdu writers in this world. Khush Amdid, Intizar Sahab. Now,
there are other big names like Mustansir Hussain Tarar, Asghar Nadeem Sayyid, Masood Ashar. They are the giants.
आपने इनसे मेरा तारुफ करवाया नहीं था, इसलिए thank you. So,
and one day I hope that we will publish the memoirs of Ameena.
Okay. Now, Ritu, your field has been specialized. You have created awareness among the educated people, if not among the illiterate, about the subject. Have you thought of branching out to other subjects, such as the plight of a man suffering at the hands of a nagging wife? Well, on a serious note, have you thought of branching out to any other subject?
Well, when we started publishing, when we set up Kali, Urvashi and I, a lot of our friends in publishing, a lot of very well-meaning friends and well-wishers said, but what will you publish? It's such a narrow specialization. So we said, no, women are half the world. So we don't think half the world is narrow. Then they said, but they don't write. So we said, maybe they write, but they don't get published. And perhaps the thing to do is to provide a space where they can be published. So they said, but they do get published. Nobody discriminates. So we said, no, they don't discriminate. But they are always the second option. The first option is always the male writer, the men who nag their wives. So we said, let's try. They said, well, it's a flash in the pan, it won't last very long, but good luck. And then they said, rather you than us. So we said, okay, we are two women and women take risks, and anyway, what's there to lose? We had 1,000 rupees. We started with 1,000 rupees. We set it up in my garage and we thought, chalo, let's see what happens. Well, it's been 30 years now, and I just wanted to say one thing, Asif Sahib, about this written word, printed word. When you work with women writers, or when you want to focus on women writers, you realize very quickly that their main forte is the spoken word. Not the written word so much, but the spoken word. And so we decided that we would actually see if we could develop this in some way. And I think that we were among the first people to actually look seriously at what is now called a testimony, the testimonial, the oral history in academic terminology. But really, as far as we were concerned, it was simply being able to translate that spoken word into the written word and then into the printed word. And very often we found that even the oral word could not be translated into the written word, it had to be translated into pictures, because so many of the women whom we wanted to reach were not literate. They still had a great deal to say. They had a great deal to say that was very important for people to hear. And so in sort of experimental ways, not that we abandoned the written word, we certainly continued with the written word and with the printed word, but we thought that there should be a way by which we can actually make available and make visible the spoken word, the drawn word, the pictorial. And so for a very long time we did lots of posters. We did what is today called a graphic novel, but we were not doing graphic novels, we were doing picture books on, let's say, women's reproductive health, for example. Because the women could draw what they wanted to say, they couldn't write it. Fair enough, someone would draw it, someone would communicate it, it would be disseminated. There wasn't a barrier in that sense, and we reached tens of thousands of women who couldn't read through these picture books. So I just wanted to bring that little sort of additional thing that hits you when you actually begin to work with women on communication. After all, what is the printed word or the written word? It's the means of communication. And that seemed to us to be an interesting path to follow. And when you say, will I ever branch out into writing about men, James Whistler and Oscar Wilde were at a party at one stage, and both of them were standing in a corner and looking rather sort of superciliously at the crowd. And Oscar Wilde said to James Whistler, he said, well, Jimmy, everyone in this room is talking about all sorts of things, but actually they're really talking about me. So James Whistler turned to him and said, well, Oscar, they may be talking about you, but they're thinking about me. So when I write about women, we are actually writing about men.
Thank you on behalf of all men in the world. And now, VK Karthika, she never told me what is VK. I think about V means victory. So, Karthika, OUP was the only multinational publishing house in India, as it was in Pakistan, as it still is, I think, in Pakistan, until the 80s, I think late 70s, when Penguin stepped into India. And then your own HarperCollins, Hay House, Random House, which merged with Penguin came, and Bloomsbury, the list is quite long. How has that changed the publishing scene in your country, or shall I say in the region, because you also publish for Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, etc.?
I think it would be a matter of scale more than anything else, perhaps. Because what these publishing houses did, and Penguin and HarperCollins were among the early ones, especially Penguin, which really established, I think, the rules of the game for multinational publishing houses in India. It was saying we are going to introduce a set of practices that have been followed in the Western publishing world for some time now, and that I think was more or less imported into India. I remember being part of the team that I don't know how many of you know how a publishing house functions in terms of editorial functioning, but there are editors who edit, as in copy edit, and then there are editors who bring in the books, who acquire manuscripts, who read and decide what should be published, or take a view on, partly at least, on that, while the publisher then decides. There was no such system in place. There were just editors, and then they would read whatever came in, and they would try and publish it. So I remember in Penguin, our publisher sitting down and saying, okay, this is how it works elsewhere. This is how it works in Penguin in the UK or the US. Why don't we start trying to do that here? So for the first time, we were actually asked, do you want to be a copy editor? Do you want to be a commissioning editor? And we had never heard these words before in that way. So all of that, I think the multinational brought in a way of working, a practice that had not really been done in that way in India before. When Ritu and Urvashi were publishing, I think you both must have done everything. You did.
Still do.
Yeah. So, whereas now we had, all the divisions, you had the editors doing this, then you had marketing people. Now, marketing wasn't something that people did separate from everything else in the beginning, but you had one marketing person then who joined, and now, as you can see, that's really become the important part of the thing. If you don't have good marketing people, you don't sell books. And so bit by bit, I think the multinational established the departments, the processes, the way that advances worked, for instance. You do have to have deep pockets to be able to say, I'm signing on 10 books this month, and I need to give an advance of a few lakhs to this one and 50,000 to that one. And it's cash flow, right? You really have to pull it out of somewhere and to be giving these checks away. And it never struck me till I actually joined Harper in a way where I had to take these decisions and say, is there money in the bank? And I'm sure that's a very big worry for smaller publishing houses, which in a strange way just vanishes when you're part of a big publishing house. You know what there is, and somebody somewhere is signing the checks. And as editors, you are liberated from all of that. All you have to do is to make sure you bring in the books that work and sell and, win you awards or whatever. But it's a qualitative kind of joy that you can take in that publishing. So in that way, I think multinational publishing houses were about investment, were about scale. You could publish more, you could publish and distribute further. So our books will come into Pakistan, will come into Sri Lanka, will go into Bangladesh, will go around the world now because of Amazon and all of these others. In fact, Marc, I just wanted to say, when you said that bookshops in India are shutting down and opening almost in the same way, I know that at HarperCollins, over the last couple of years, especially this year, our sales of physical books, and I'm not talking about e-books, physical books are 50-50. 50% of the people are buying from bookstores and 50% are buying off the big websites, Amazon, Flipkart, all of these. So it's very worrying for us that this is happening. We are happy that we have all these people who are buying, but the worry is that you are never going to discover a book in the same way that you discovered it in the bookstore. You're not walking in and saying, let me just browse, I like the jacket, I like the back cover, oh, I didn't know this writer existed. Where do you do all that on the net? You go to what you think someone's recommended or what you've heard about maybe, but mostly you go and say, I want this book, order it, buy it, and that's the end of that. Now you might be buying more maybe, or of a certain kind of book maybe, but you're also buying based on what you already know. That element of excitement, that element of just appreciating something for the smell and the feel of it and all of that has gone. And I'm one of those who reads my manuscripts on my iPad now, can read on the phone now, for God's sake. I can read whole manuscript on the phone now. But I know that if I have to go for pleasure, then I'm going to curl up with a book and I'm going to read it. I don't have grandchildren yet, but I do have children, and the joy of it is sharing that physical book with them, the word, the printed word. But I do think it's in danger. I think there's a lot of threat to that physical book now. And I'm not unhappy about that either, in the sense that, okay, things change. You still have the word. You still have it written somewhere else. If not on the page, you'll have it on your screen. So maybe it's not all bad. The worry would be if all of that converted for some reason into audio-visual. I mean, if our children are only going to look at stuff, if there is a voice talking to them, if there's something telling them how to respond. I mean, that whole space of imagination being limited by audio-visual rather than released by the printed word, which I think is what the printed word can do. One word and you have 5 images. And here you have one image that condenses 5 words into one thing. And that kind of future where the imagination is limited, that is more worrying than the form that that printed word can take. So that's my response.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ameena, you have contributed immensely to the strengthening of the OUP in Pakistan, of building it up completely, and also learning, as I said. So you've achieved quite a lot now. Quite obviously, you are not the kind to rest on your laurels. So what are your future plans, apart from the memoirs that we want you to, we would request you to write? What are your future plans?
Well, Asif, I don't have Ritu's talents, so I don't think I can write a book. And I actually, since Ritu mentioned Nayantara Sehgal, I just wanted to show this book to everybody because I've just finished reading it. So I don't think I'll be writing my memoirs. And however, I do feel that...
The mic is not on, is it?
Asif, the देखने please. As I was saying, I really won't be writing my memoirs because I can't write, unlike Ritu. However, I think I do want to, I just feel that there's so much more to be done in publishing in Pakistan. And also as far as, you see, I regard publishing as very distinct from printing. And I think that has been the problem here. There are, you'll go to a business and they will say we are printers, publishers, booksellers. People don't distinguish between the three over here. And this has been a problem for us. Authors bring books to us for publishing. And when we tell them, we have a review process which takes about 3 months, sometimes it extends to 4. And when we go back to them with a decision that yes, we would like to publish your book, they say that, all right, will it be ready next month? Because there's such and such event. Because that's how long it takes to print a book. And this has been a big hassle for us for a long time. I mean, publishers cannot distinguish, writers don't distinguish between printers or publishers. And that is, I think one of my challenges has been educating our authors on how to present a book that is in a condition to be reviewed for publishing, and of course the time taken to publish it. And again, even if we go through the editorial process, which as Karthika has told you a little about, so I won't dwell into that, but after we have completed our editorial process, and finally we've got the printed book in our, I think that's when the work begins. Because it's really, for me, it's very important as a publisher to do outreach work, to do networking, and actually becoming an activist, because that is why we have started all these festivals. Because in Pakistan, you have to beat the drums in order to sell a book. It's not enough to have a printed book in your warehouse. That is when you begin the marketing process in order to sell. And it works. You have book launches, you have talks, you have festivals, sessions, interviews, and a book starts to take off and it starts selling. So it's actually, again, between printing and publishing, there's a huge gap, which is filled by sales promotion and marketing. And talking about the internet, I mean, I suppose that would come into the future. So far, people tell me, though, soon you'll be out of business because printed books, people are now buying books on on Kindle and so on. And I tell them that, look, my job is not to print a book. My job is to produce content. Now, once we have the content, we have a complete book in soft copy. We can either print it or we can upload it on any website. So whatever the format that is required by readers, once we have the content, we can produce it in any format. And yes, I think e-books or books online cost less than printed books because obviously the cost of paper and production doesn't go into it. But they also cost less to store. You don't have to have space, physical space to store those books or to move those books. Distribution, you save on distribution, customer services, warehousing. So you make, it costs you less, and of course the revenue that you get from it is less, but it gets balanced out. So I think in Pakistan actually we haven't reached this stage of 50% or we don't even have Flipkart. Flipkart doesn't work here, and I think if anybody wants to set up that kind of business, the field is wide open for them to set up a local Amazon or type of business. But I just want to tell you about the power of the printed word very quickly. We published a book in which we had, the author had criticized some NGO that was over here, and one of the women from there came to me, and she was livid, and she said that this is what you have written in my book, and this is what you've written about, published about us. Although it was factual, and I said, I tried to calm her down. I said, don't worry, we've only done 1,000 copies of the book, and I don't think it's selling that well that it'll reprint. She said, no, but these 1,000 copies are going to be in libraries for decades. And that was what was upsetting her. And actually that is the power of the printed word. Once it gets out there, it stays out there for a long, long time. So it has a huge impact. And I think publishing is all about impact.
Thank you, Ameena. How much time is left for us?
Question and answer.
Sorry? Question and answer. Please raise your hands and point and mention who are you asking this question.
To all distinguished publishers here, it's a question that I understand that income from royalties, authors' income from royalties has suddenly started going down the world over. And I checked out and I understand that best-selling authors in Pakistan, Ahmad, the royalty incomes have gone down. Now, is this a worldwide phenomenon? Is it a Pakistan phenomenon? And why is this a fact, if it is a fact?
अफजाल साहब आप बताइए, आप ये दोनों गवर्नमेंट कॉलेज वाले हैं?
No, but I
Because
think
let's say take Faizam Faiz, yes.
No, Faizam Faiz, I think you see, the hires, they are getting more royalties than I think actually Faizam Faiz was getting. It's going upward. Books are selling more and more, and now there are many translations are available also of Faiz, and I think the percentage and its trend is upward. It's going upward. Writers are getting more royalties than before. You cannot say, because you see, if you are getting before there was only books, written word, printed word, now it's e-books. So you are all the time getting royalties and payments. If you are a good manager, if you manage your percentage, manage your what you are getting, I think the trend is upward.
Can I also just quickly add to that? I think one reason is that because of book piracy. When a book is pirated, authors get no royalties and actually publishers get no revenue. And that is a huge problem here in Pakistan. And I hope that all of you will not buy pirated books.
What can the author do about it? It is for the publisher to stop the piracy.
Yes, publishers are doing that. They are working on it.
I just want to add one little thing coming from the Indian publishing scene where there are some writers who don't just live on their royalties now. The big guys, the Chetan Bhagat, Amish Tripathi sort of writers who are the big mass market writers, they now earn more money by being a writer. As in, if they go to speak somewhere, they get lakhs of rupees to speak. And this whole talk circuit, the entire sort of extension of the writer's brand has become a very big thing. So there are people who are earning way more royalties than they would have earned 10 years ago.
And I think I can recall what you said, that if you write instead of general books, if you write for children, then you will get very good royalties. I think you pay quite a huge sum to some of your school writers.
Yes, textbook writers make a lot of money. I mean, some of our textbook writers are getting royalties of 1 crore a year.
Good.
But of course, they can get more if their books are not pirated.
Yes, but I do want to add that this is a percentage that is very minimal. The writers who actually make a lot of money is a very, very small percentage. Today, for instance, in the UK and in America, writers are not able, in their vast majority, to live off their writing. So, this is the problem that's actually happening today. The second point that I wanted to make is that things are changing in publishing. I don't know if you know, but last year 2 major publishing groups got together to merge a holding that's going to be the biggest publishing holding ever worldwide, which is Random House and Penguin in English language. And I look at this with how would I say, with a bit of skepticism, because I've been in publishing for 30 years, and I used to head the European operations for HarperCollins in the 90s, and HarperCollins had then been born out of 2 publishers, Harper and Row in the States and Collins Publishers in Scotland. And that's what formed HarperCollins. The same thing happened to Random House with Bertelsmann and other publishers who actually merged to actually conquer more territories and to share authors, to make a long story short. But what's happening today with Random House and Penguin getting together, and in France, Gallimard and Flammarion getting together, and there are other mergers that are going to happen in the next years. These mergers are not at all like the ones that took place in the 90s. And the reason why is because they're based on fear. They come out of fear. And I think that any decision that comes out of fear is a wrong decision. And they come out of fear, why? Because these publishers fear Amazon. And it's their response to actually the advances taken by Amazon worldwide. This is what I wanted to say.
Does Amazon make any impact on the royalties that the author will get?
But I don't know. But I think that Amazon is. I tend to think that because apart from my work for Taschen in the subcontinent, I also have a literary agency that tries to promote Indian and Pakistani writers worldwide. And what I notice from that point of view is that the advances that my authors get are minimal today from publishers. They have actually shrinked down compared to, I would say, about 6, 7, 8 years ago. So in terms of ebooks, for instance, the royalties that are paid by ebook publishers, and Amazon is an ebook publisher as well as being an online bookseller, these royalties are quite, in fact, low. the positive point about Amazon, because there's always something positive in negativity, is that the promotion that is done by Amazon for authors, and especially young authors online, is something that is not done at all anymore by publishers. Very rare are publishers who can fork out the money to promote an author who is not a best-selling author, because they don't want to take the risk anymore to do that. However, when you look at Amazon, and when you look at the page of Amazon, you will have these unknown young writers which are actually on the page of Amazon with all kinds of comments by readers, and this is free promotion, and this is done by Amazon. So
sorry, I have to interrupt because he's been waving at the time. It's the fault of people like Amir Saiyid who ask such stimulating and pertinent questions that we are running short of time. So, two more questions, please.
There's a hand there.
There's a hand there. Yes, the gentleman in the corner.
My question is quite boring. I just want to know about Karthika's comment about when she said that the printed word evoke more images than the listened word. What are the basis of saying this? I'm just curious about it.
I suppose it's an entirely personal, subjective sort of reading you do when you have the word in front of you and you read a story and you are visualizing the characters, you're visualizing the situation. The words mean something to you from your personal context and your personal history of reading. Whereas I see my children watching television or a screen-led image, and the same story told to them, the character is fixed, that person is wearing a certain kind of thing, they look a certain way, they move a certain way, and the images move so fast, there's no time to go back and forth to recapture a moment. You just keep going, and you have no time to think. You're just responding with part of you, which is a visual connect. Whereas with a word, I think you stop and you see something interesting, read something interesting, and you go back and you reflect. And the space for reflection, I fear, is missing from that world.
Great.
So this is Nasir Sumro. I am a young writer. I'd like to ask you, anyone can answer, especially it's the question of subcontinent. When Chetan Bhagat just got his book published, and before that he has to face a lot of hindrances. He could not get his book published. Twice or thrice he was rejected, and now he's a acclaimed author. I'd like to ask you, just a subcontinent, India and Pakistan, why the young writers have a lot of struggle to get their works published? I think I'm just trying to nudge into this profession, but I've not got any limelight.
I think writers have always had to struggle to get published, young or old or middle-aged. It's a question of, this business about low royalties, for example, and a writer not being able to live off their writing is a situation that prevails even today. There are not, and I agree with Marc, I think that, and we forget that very, very eminent writers have always had day jobs. T.S. Eliot was a banker. You don't think of it now in those terms. Writing has always been something that you did on the. I think today is the first time, our century is the first time that some people can be only writers, can actually claim it as a profession. No one earlier said they were writers. They didn't call themselves writers. Even today, if you ask someone like Nayanthara Sehgal, who has written 9 novels and 7 non-fiction and God knows how many political columns, she will say, I'm not a writer. So what are you? I'm a woman who writes. There's a difference between what you see yourself as doing. It was always a struggle. I just want to respond to you. And not just for younger writers, not just for writers like Chetan Bhagat who are, I shouldn't be saying this, but I would have rejected Chetan Bhagat. It's not the kind of book I published. It's not the kind of book I would like to publish. You publish a limited number of books a year. You select what you want to do. I'm very happy that he's been very successful, and I'm very happy that the publisher who finally published him has also been very successful. But that's not a comment on the struggle.
I also think that, the simple thing is when manuscripts come to you as an editor, it is a very subjective decision. You choose what you think you would like. It's actually quite difficult to choose something on the basis of this will sell, as opposed to I like it and therefore want to publish it. Because that's where I think the conflict lies. It's very hard to just make a business decision. And publishers make mistakes. We are often out of sync with what's going on with the younger people who are writing and reading. There's a little gap there, and maybe that explains it.
I want to advise, the young writer that you need to manage your potential. There's a chain of, it's a line of working. You first need to, write in the papers, newspapers, magazines, literary magazines. Then you start, attending the different writers' festivals, writers' gatherings, and then you can easily, predict, or you can foresee if you have potential that your book should be published, and then you should have the right connections or the people who can, advise you to go to the such and such publisher.
Thank you, Afzaal sir. There are these two ladies who've been raising their hands time and again.
I want to thank you, Dr. Arfa Saida, for coming here.
Oh, where is she?
She's sitting over there. It's
modest as ever, hiding herself.
Yes.
Yes.
5 minutes. Trying to show you there's 5 minutes left.
5 minutes left. What are you? 5 minutes left. So that makes it 10 minutes. 5. So any other question? If yes, there's one question. नहीं आपका हो गया फिर इनका. हाँ, yes, please.
It's generally for the entire panel. Do you think that the part about living off of writing and writers being more concerned about how much they'll be earning by that book has affected the quality of content being produced? For example, if we take Stephanie Meyer, like just an example. So, do you really think that the hope of a writer that he or she might live off just by writing has deeply affected the quality of content being produced as that?
I personally don't think so. I don't think you can write for the market. I think you would write what you write, and if you're lucky, then it just takes off. Stephanie Meyer was great fun. It's not fun. So, and look at 50 Shades of Grey and books like that. I don't think they knew there was a market waiting for them so big, but it happened. And then other people tried to write like them to replicate that success. And I think that's where the problem lies. Because then publishers get into this mode and say, Twilight worked, I want more vampire romance. I want to publish it because it'll sell. Then writers will say, I can write that too. They try to write that, and there's not quite the same thing. Then you get a sort of imitation product. And that, I think, is the danger more than at the first level of writing for the market.
So, any more questions? Finally, Ji, last question.
Assalamu alaikum. Ma'am, Ameena has pointed out that the tragedy that Amazon is not working in Pakistan. We have nothing related to Amazon, and I don't think there are any e-books in Pakistan. There is no electronic publishing in Pakistan. If I were to open such a business, such a website, how will Oxford University Press and how do I approach the publishers to coordinate with me and produce an e-library as well? Because publishing would be in your, it will be your job. My job will be marketing on the website, right?
Right. Well, there are actually e-books are beginning now. They're beginning to emerge. But you can also sell hard copies, printed books. Because it's much easier to do it within Pakistan, as Flipkart is doing in India. Although in India, I think Amazon have branches and Google have, but here I do feel that you can sell both e-books and printed books. And actually the field is wide open. The field is also wide open for, and this is something that I've been thinking of when you asked me the question, earlier, to set up a literary agency in Pakistan.
Yes.
And also actually to set up a writer's residency, similar to the Iowa residency. So actually here there is a lot of potential, because we have so much writing going on in Pakistan.
I just would like to add to this that online sales in India have been just staggering last year. $11 billion have been spent online last year in 2014, and apparently in India it's going to double this year in 2015. So of course the books are just a very small percentage of this, but it leads the way in the fact that books actually are sold also everywhere.
Thank you very much, my distinguished panelists and the audience. Just 2 points very shortly. Badar, the editor of Herald, is here, and he will bear me out that unfortunately the Urdu press does not respond very favorably or does not respond at all to even Urdu books. So it's the English press which gives reviews and which gives coverage to book launches, etc. in Pakistan. I don't know if this situation is the same in India.
Sorry to say that all the Pakistani Urdu newspaper have the literary pages where they, you see, portray or tell people that these are the, all the Urdu newspapers have the literary pages, weekly literary pages.
But what about the book launches, etc.? They don't. Anyway, we'll discuss this over a cup of tea, which is getting cold. The other thing is that please tell people, please tell everybody to get your children to read. You should read first so that you set an example. I know people who, for instance, in Liberty, they have set up a section for children. So it's very heartwarming to see chirping children, hunting for books, finding books, and then excitedly sharing it. I know of an 11-year-old girl who wrote a novel, and it was published at the age of 12. And when she was interviewed, she said, my father, she was interviewed by Times of India when she went to Bombay. She said, my parents never stopped me from buying books, even when I knew they were burdened by our education. So please make it a mission, spread the word, make children read. Thank you very much. Acha, that's information for me. Thank you. This is